My name is Cedric, thank you so much for watching. I am reading a book. I'm reading a lot of books, but I'm writing a book on philosophy. This has been my goal for the past year and a half, I would say, when I finished my history of painting. And so today I'm writing a book of philosophy. So I wanted to take an example just to understand, because philosophy is mostly getting to political philosophy, and I realize maybe you heard about what's going on in France and in Europe and in Italy. Mostly this woman was elected, I don't even remember her name, and all the newspapers are saying that nationalism, ergo fascism, is back in Europe, etc., etc. And I don't believe that's true. I don't believe that's true, because I think whatever is what you think about, you should think about it in a philosophical way. Which means, in this case, you have to think about the word nationalism. Okay. So if this is nationalism, okay, then you have to think, what is the word nationalism? What does it mean? What is the whole idea of nation? What is a nation, right? And for that, it's very simple. You have to get back to people like Plato, who wrote the Republic, like Aristotle, who wrote into his Politics about the fact that we are political animals. And so we started with, when human beings started, we were just in tribes, and tribes became communities, and then in Iraq, Iran, we started the Sumerian civilization. That's where civilization started, as far as we know. Again, depending on your definition of civilization. The Greek came with this idea of the word city, and civilization. What is interesting to me with that is mostly the fact that the press today is pretty sure that nationalism is the enemy of the people. Two things. First, I do believe the press started writing that is mostly socialist. And socialism, for me, is the worst example of society by far. I'm not the only one to say that. Nietzsche said that a lot, and all the thinkers that I do admire in philosophy, they all agreed on that point. Even democracy is probably something you should question. Even Spinoza, which I've been reading a lot lately, is questioning democracy, and you will read somewhere that Spinoza did worship democracy. He did not, because we will never know that, because he never finished that part of his political treatise on democracy. So what interests me today is mostly, and that's what you have to think when you want to think as a philosopher, whether you're writing philosophy or just reading philosophy, try to understand what is going on, what is at stake. Should we just read the press and say, oh, okay, so what is going on is pretty bad, and things are hopeful, and things is going to be hopeful, and again people are talking about 1936 in Germany, and okay, let's again think as a philosopher and as an historian. What did happen in 1936 in Germany? People voted for National Socialism. Again, National Socialism, the two words were together, never forget that. And it's funny, because today when you talk with socialists, they always tell you it has nothing to do with socialism. Well, I'm sorry, but when you read the text of socialism and when you read the text of National Socialism, they're very close one to each other. So if they have nothing to do, why are the texts so close and so common? But that's another debate. What interests me on this one is mostly what happened to leading to the election of 1936 in Germany is before the social democracies that was going on with the Republic of Weimar. And during that time, this social democracy of Weimar, which is cherished by so many people, and again, I really want you to question that, because skepticism, which is what the press critics, a lot of them were into, is you have to question, or at least you have the right, and you should never forget that, to question everything. You have the right to question everything. So the social democracy in the first quarter of the 20th century was using a very violent police, like in a country that I can't describe, but I can't say it because I'll go to jail if I say it online, literally, or even worse. Is using a very violent police, which is always a sign in the history of humanity, again from the Sumerians, and you can read that under the Greeks and the Perse and the Roman civilization, etc., etc. And of course, the whole history of Christianism is a good example of that as well. The extreme violence of the police is a symbol of the way of living together, and that's why democracy for me is probably not the best way of living together, or at least it's not the best way of living together anymore. And that's from reading a lot of Nietzsche and the whole idea of Spinoza, which is aristocracy, monarchia, and democracy. And so you really have to consider the three way of living together, question each from the origin of humanity, and see what we can do with that. What can we do with that? Where are we going with that? How can we work that together? And how can we build on that? And I don't know, for some reason I do believe there's a lot of hope for the next generation to get involved in that, because right now they don't care about what's going on anymore. Apparently, if you look at the votes, like 80% of the people, 126 just in my own country, are not even voting. Like 80%, right? 8 people out of 10. Yes, 8 people out of 10. Probably a better way to say that. 4 people out of 5 are not voting, and thank you guys for that. I think you're doing great, and probably in like 20 years from now, you will get involved into politics. You will get involved into politics because you won't have a choice. Like reading philosophy, and when you ask the question ethic, like Spinoza, or morality, like Nietzsche, very quickly you realize questioning what is a human being is questioning how do human beings live together. And that is why this question will get to you, either you want it or not. You don't have to get involved in it per se. You don't have to get involved into anything, but it will get involved because you will have to live together. That's the only thing I can guarantee. And either you will go through small communities, and I tried in different communities, and I'm very happy about that. And I want to say hi to my friend who's still in Horrorville today. I try to live in big cities. I try to live in the countryside. I tried many ways to live differently, and finally I find some sort of peace by being in a city, okay, by the beach. I give you this right now. And by still working, but as less as possible, like only like 4 days per month, working to make a living in the Louvre, doing my show Love Your Way to the Louvre. And again, thank you so much for coming, and I bless you, and I'm still enjoying that job more than ever. It's not even. So back to what all the newspapers are printing right now. Just be very careful about what is printed everywhere. Just being very careful about there's only one way of thinking, like good and evil. Look at the elections and friend lately. There's only every time 2 choices: the good choice and the bad choice, which is weird, because first I do believe with Spinoza that good and bad do not even exist, right? This whole notion of good and bad do not exist. And if you read the Zarathustra by Nietzsche, at the end he's saying that morality is something for sheep and not for human beings. And I start to think about that more and more, especially the morality caused socialism, which is again for me the worst way of living. And the thing about socialism which is interesting is like they change the name, I don't even know, they change the name so many times lately that people still are falling for the name. It's like at least the more honest with the phone to just change the number, but like I'm gonna call it the green phone 11 is still green phone 12. It's still a green phone. Taking a random example on purpose, right? When socialism moved to in France walking, which is so stupid, and now it became something I don't even remember the names. I can't keep up with the name because like Heidegger, like Nietzsche, like a lot of people are trying to stay away from newspaper as much as possible and the news in general. Let me give you one more example, which I think is going to illustrate the whole thing a little bit better. Wagner, the composer, the music composer. I do love his Phantom, and I took my wife to see it, and that's why I got married, and I have a family. I'm very proud of that. The music of Wagner, for Nietzsche, it was the example of the greatest music you can do. Wagner with the Hope of Germany, etc. You may not know, and if you know, Wagner at one point decided to join the whole idea of nationalism, which was carrying Nietzsche, and so there was a whole break of that, and the whole idea of romanticism. It will be too long to explain. And last time I was thinking about Wagner because I was watching a movie which is taking the music of Wagner, and it's funny because this movie is supposed to be fighting the Nazis, but the original soundtrack is Wagner, which is like, I don't know, there was an irony in that, which is interesting. And so Nietzsche believed in Wagner, and then Nietzsche broke with Wagner. Nietzsche broke with Wagner because of his join of nationalism, and he said it was really something you should not do. And of course, the idea of Wagner and the idea of nationalism is stupid to everyone. Even though you still have to question what is a nation, why do we live under the United Nations, why some countries are part of the United Nations and some countries are not part of the United Nations, and when a country is behaving badly, considered as badly, again, I don't believe in bad and evil, the United Nations are threatening them to get banned from the United Nations. So nationalism is bad, but being not part of the United Nations is bad as well. So okay, so what is that? So should you be a nation? Should you not be a nation? I don't get it. But please enlighten me at one point on this one. All right. So we're getting back to my point, which is Wagner and Nietzsche, and Wagner was the hope for Nietzsche, and then he was a disappointed hope. Nietzsche was disappointed by almost everyone, to be honest with you, even by Schopenhauer, which is still a philosopher I deeply appreciate. His metaphysics for me is like something absolutely extraordinary to read. You need, as a young man, and I'm clearly talking to young men of like the year 3000, you need to have passions for wrong people. That's okay. And by wrong, I mean wrong for you. And wrong for you as a human and wrong for you as a community. And that's where the whole thing is getting very complex, because it's almost impossible to know what is good for you and what is good for the community you live in for your entire life. And by definition, this idea of, I don't like the for good or evil, so I'm going to use the word harmony, for example, or joy or happiness or whatever. But harmony, I like that word because I think it's like you have the music and it sounds well, it doesn't sound. It's very easy. Take a piano, do this, it doesn't sound like nothing, and try to something, and the notes have a harmony. So the word harmony is easy to understand and quite common worldwide. So get something harmonic, and for you and for the community, and make it work together, and that is the most difficult thing. And you need to start to do that in the comfort of your own home with your own family. Then eventually you extend it to a family. And I'm always thinking when I say that about the example of Gandhi. The Mahatma Gandhi, which clearly changed the history of India, but probably the history of the world as well. You still find t-shirts of Gandhi all over the planet. Was clearly not successful in his own family. And that always strike me. How can you be such an important inspiration. I don't want to get into the detail of Gandhi politics per se, but you have to admit that the idea of non-violence and civil disobedience is still interesting to me. I do believe in civil disobedience. For example, I read lately that Janis Joplin was taking off like 14-15% of her taxes, 16 maybe, because that was a percentage of the American army, and she said she didn't want to participate in paying for the army of her country. I don't say I think it's interesting because she was agreeing with her own harmony and the harmony of communities. That's a good example of that, right? And I know a lot of my Russian friends right now are complaining about subscription getting back in the country of Russia, and that they have to flee the country or join the army in a conflict they don't want to be part of. And believe me, I feel you, my Russian brothers, because I had to avoid the army in France, and that was a massive and complex fight because I did not agree with the politic of the fight. Just right now, France is said to be at peace. We're like at least in 6 conflicts over the planet. So France is not at peace. We have armies in at least 5 or 6 countries right now. So the only thing that you have to remember from this whole talk is that be very careful what you read in the news. Get back to history books as much as possible. Get back to reading political philosophy so you can understand better what is at stake. Last time, I don't know, I was just I was writing a chapter of my book of philosophy and reading some analysis about a guy, and he was saying, and he's somewhat important in my life because I used to work with him, the war between Russia and Ukraine, or what the newspaper called the invasion of Ukraine, that Ukraine used to be part of Russia. And I'm not saying that Russia should go to Ukraine or not. I'm just saying historically it should be that. I know I can see some of you say, okay, imagine the Germans coming back to France. Yes, I can totally imagine that. And yes, there will be a war, and yes, that's how it is. And again, I do believe in civil disobedience. I do not believe there's no violence in the human being. As a matter of fact, as you read people like Schopenhauer, you're going to realize that the human beings as a group is usually mostly going toward war. And some people do believe like education will change the mind of the young kids today and we'll live in a world without war. I don't believe for a second about that, because I do believe that if you take those, like, let's say 6,000 years of civilization we have so far, and I'm talking the entire humanity of the planet, we all been behaving in the same way. And so again, the only way to go forward is to match what is your harmony and the harmony of the community. I'm going to finish on Bernard Poitras. Bernard Poitras is a fantastic teacher. I'm going to put an image eventually of this guy right there, or maybe some of his books, because I don't think he cares about his image, but he's a translator of Latin, German, English, Christians, Greeks. I mean, the guy is fascinated in all the knowledge, especially some antique to at least Middle Age, and then Spinoza, 17th century knowledge. And this guy fascinated me, but I think he translated some romantics as well with Hölderlin or Heine. I don't know. My point being, he said we live right now, and he just said that really recently on the radio. I'm listening a lot to the radio, cultural, it's mostly podcasts, stuff like that. And he was saying that we live in a world of avarice. I don't know how to say that in English for some reason, so I'm going to say avarice, put it right there. And it's crazy, because when he said that, and it was like weeks ago, it stuck in my head. I can't get rid of that. It is so true. It is so true that we live in a world of avarice, and I don't know why we do that. That is very, very surprising. Like, economically, there is something to do. That's why lately I've been bringing a lot of people, like the economists and political economy, and then economy of philosophy, Maybe you heard about Piketty, the French people. The French guy wrote like the capital of the 21st century. Then you go back to Marx. You go back to basically all these thinkers who've been involved into thinking that, and then the people who commend that as well. And I'm going to take one last example. Janis Joplin. Comparing Janis Joplin to the Christ is kind of weird. I gave you that, but nevertheless, I say you want it or not, the Christ. So let's just call him Jesus. But I love the fact the Christ, because Nietzsche refers to him mostly as a Christ more than Jesus. Was condemned for many reasons, but one of the reasons is because he has the people not to pay the taxes. And last time I was reading, and I met that guy from a bank called the Arch, which is an independent bank, and that independent bank is making sure that whatever you put the money in that bank, they tell you everything they're doing with that money, like literally tell you everything they're doing about that money. And he said, for example, if you put your money in my bank, and the guy is a simple man, he's not rich, he's not interested in money, he's interested of the money for the good of the community. Fantastic man, literally fantastic man. And he was telling me that the problem is like the money you put in your bank mostly is financing war. And that's an example I've been talking about with people that don't believe me. They don't believe me. That's unofficial news. France sold more than 150 million euros of weapons to Russia. 150 million euros of weapons to 153, 55, something massive, right? Weapons. You're like, yeah, but it's private company. Yes, it's private company, but these amounts have to be validated by the Minister of the Army. Every kind of weaponry we sell to any foreign country have to be validated by the economy. That means by voting for the government that is in right now for like 5 years, and of course I didn't vote for that because it's socialism, and I'm against socialism, validated the fact that the Russians could invade Ukraine, for example, right? But what strikes me, and I'm not judging anyone by doing that because people don't know, what interests me is the fact that people put on their Facebook, on social networks, a little heart with the flag of Ukraine, say, oh my God, it's awful, what's happening, I don't get it. Well, you don't get it, but first thing, eventually by voting, you participate into that. Second, by putting your money in the bank, you feed the system, and you're feeding the system just by putting your money in the bank, right? So personally, I'm trying to avoid to be aligned with your idea. And again, I don't know if my ideas are right or wrong. I'm all for skepticism. I'm all for questioning and doubting everything. Maybe you think my ideas are not good, and if you don't, you're completely right, and you should go with what you think and only what you think. But at least it took me a lot of time to agree with my idea, and now I'm trying to live by my ideas. And it sounds like nothing, but it's literally harder than it looks, because sometimes, and COVID really helped us do that, for example, in a way, strange way. Like families who think, oh, you should do this in the COVID period, or you shouldn't do this, or etc., etc. So I think the COVID kind of clarified this kind of situation. Either you're for or against this, or this kind of thing that was really interesting to me in many ways, right? It's been way longer than I imagined. I'm probably going to make some cuts into that. We're still trying to make sense out of it. Thank you so much for watching. And no matter what you do, don't forget, if you're not doing it with a smile, well, you might be doing it wrong. You gotta take care.